Thanks so much for joining me today, James. It's an honor to be speaking with you again. Some may know, but some may not. We did an amazing interview with you back in 2018, which was really in depth, and we had a fantastic conversation, which is on our blog. But no surprise, a lot has changed since 2018. So we thought it would be great to get together and have a conversation. Um, I think one of the things I would love to talk about is, you're in a unique position. I think it's becoming more standard, but it's still not the norm where you are fully on the business side of running a law firm. And so I would love if you could just kind of briefly tell us a little bit about your path from practicing attorney to president and CEO of Fenimore, which is the fastest growing law firm in the US.
I appreciate it, Catherine. Well, I'm really happy to be here. So, my path was not a conventional one. I did not go to law school intending to be on the business side of a law firm. I stumbled into it, and it turns out it's been a great fit for my skill set and interests. But going back, I wanted to practice law. I came out and did practice law. I really enjoyed it. And my path really started in baby steps. So there were some initiatives going on within the firm, and firm leadership asked for volunteers to help with. So, a couple examples. We were trying to implement some new technology, and there was a technology committee, and they were looking for volunteers to beta test to try and find what might work best. Started doing that, enjoyed it, became involved with some of the folks that were in leadership. Soon thereafter, we had an issue where we were really trying to improve the associate experience at the firm. How do we make this a better place for our associates? How do we improve our retention numbers? And I got on a committee that looked at that. We spoke with all of the associates. We learned what we could do better. We looked around the marketplace. We looked at what other law firms are doing, and we looked outside of the legal world to other businesses to get best practices, came up with recommendations, presented that to firm leadership. Some of those were adopted, some were not, but it was a great experience. And I basically found myself moving from one committee to another. I enjoyed it. I got to know our people. It's really a great way to build relationships with others within the firm. And I started exercising some muscles that I hadn't before. Law school teaches you how to think critically. That's really important. It teaches you the black letter law, the basics of how to practice, but you really don't learn much, if anything, about business. And that was the case for me. So this was a trial run, if you will, getting into the world of law firm management. And then eventually I found myself in a position where someone came knocking on my door and said, "Would you like to join our management committee," which is the firm's executive leadership team? And at the time, I was still in my mid 30s. I thought, oh my gosh, why would they want some kid on management? But I jumped at the opportunity. I thought it would be a great way to learn more about the firm. And for me, it was especially significant because I started my career at Fenimore as a file clerk way back after my freshman year in college. So I've really seen different facets of the firm. I've had a chance to see it from the inside out. And this was really an exciting opportunity. I did that for a couple of years, and the managing partner said that he was going to step out of the position, return to practice, and I found myself suddenly in the role I'm in now.
You talked about looking at best practices outside of, the law firm and how you don't learn about running a business from law school, which is, one of the big things we really want to talk about because so many of the users on our platform are small to mid-size law firm partners, and they have so much proficiency with their practice area, but the running the business side of the law firm is just really often feels like it's something they're doing off the side of their desk. And I think you've always been really forward thinking in terms of not just looking at what's been done in law firms before, but also in looking at, well, what are other industries doing and how can we incorporate those practices into running a law firm? So I would kind of love to know if you had a friend and they told you, James, I want to strike out on my own. I want to hang my own shingle. I want to start my own law firm. Knowing what you do about the business side of running a law firm, what advice do you think that you would give them?
Think carefully about it. And I mean that sincerely. It can be a great thing if you want to go out on your own. But I can tell you on this side of it, having had laterals come through and spoken with a lot of lawyers, it can be overwhelming. There is a lot to running a law firm. So my position is a little bit different. We're a pretty big organization now. When I started, we were about 125 lawyers. Today, we're 350 lawyers. So we always have had um, professional team members that have helped. We've expanded that. We can talk more about that later as we move into some of the deeper discussions. But I would say you really need to think about, is this something you want to do? I've heard it said that the admin side of a sole practitioner shop can take 50% of their time. That's a huge commitment. And it can be wonderful. You're in control, you're in the driver's seat. Those are some of the great things about being on your own. You don't have anyone that you're reporting to, you call the shots. On the other hand, do you like accounting? Do you like keeping books? Do you like dealing with HR issues? If you have employees, are you a marketer? How are you going to approach all of these different subjects here, none of which you have training on? So I think the first step is considering that piece of it. I think too often people are focused on the practice, or they're really running an economic calculus. I can make so much money simply by being on my own if I bill X number of hours at X rate, forgetting about that side. So I think if you get past that hurdle, you're going to move into the process of educating yourself, because the worst thing you can do is go into this without a lot of knowledge, because you can make mistakes that can cost you money, that can cost you time, or get you in legal trouble too if you don't watch out.
You mentioned marketing, and I remember when we talked to you in 2018, you were really ahead of the game in terms of thinking about digital marketing and things like SEO, which most law firms weren't really thinking about much at that point. And I would love to know, what do you see as being sort of the current cutting edge for law firm marketing, and what do you see as current, but also what do you see as really important for near future for law firms to think about?
Great question. So, how you market depends on your audience. So, Fenimore's a full service business shop. So, we have a lot of our business. We serve the mid market. We have Fortune 100 clients. We have individual clients and everything in between. You need to consider, who are you trying to reach? Now, for us, if you're looking at that large client level, most of those in house lawyers, GCs, are making decisions based on relationships. So, they're probably not going to go Google, give me the best M&A lawyer in the Bay Area. Unlikely that's going to happen. But there are certain practices that are more consumer facing where you will rely on search engine optimization, search engine marketing, digital marketing in the form of social media. I think can be really powerful, building out that presence for your law firm. What's your brand? What differentiates you from others? Do you really stand out? I hear a lot of people talk about this, but if you look across social media platforms, most law firms look pretty darn similar to one another. You talk about the leading edge, Catherine. I think the answer is figuring out how we use all of this new AI search technology. So now we've seen this year with the rise of AI, and that's ChatGPT, of course, or Google Gemini. You're seeing now that people are going to Google less than they used to. And so they're actually looking to these other sources for information. So there's an emerging world of AI optimization. How
Mm.
do you do that? How can you be successful? In addition to the traditional platforms that we've had now for many, many years, like social media, or like search engine optimization through Google, or online banner ads, that sort of thing.
You took the question almost out of my mouth, which one of the questions I was going to ask is, how are you thinking about and how do you see AI changing not only the business side of law, but the practice side of law as well?
Yeah, so this is a really important topic. It's one we spent a lot of time thinking about here at Fenimore. So we just launched a brand new AI initiative. We're calling it Project Blue Wave AI. Where does the blue wave come from? It's really a shout out to our 2024 strategic plan, which is built around this concept of blue ocean strategies, which is a great book. I would encourage the watchers to go ahead and pick up and read. It's written by Renee Maborn. It's basically the concept of finding an open lane, untapped potential, and
Mm.
how do you harness that? So that's the theme of our plan. That's the name of our AI platform we're building. We really think of AI as having different components. First of all, is it's changing the delivery of legal services. It's changing the way we access information, and it's also changing the way our employees work. When it comes to the delivery of legal services, we know the standard law firm model that still dominates today, that's been around for a century, which is you sell your time. You simply charge by the hour and you send clients a bill. Well, every law firm, every lawyer is facing a challenge now. If we have technology that can do in 10 minutes what we used to do in 10 hours,
Mhm.
how do we still run a profitable business model, a sustainable business model? Are we going to continue to invest large amounts of money in technology and then only to have our bills cut down and then not be able to afford the lawyers that we want to have? So there needs to be a way where we can provide value to the client, recognizing that our lawyers have tremendous knowledge, experience, and skill that AI doesn't have, but utilize this technology to make it a better bargain for the client. We think there's a way to do that by moving into alternative pricing. It's a
Mhm.
topic that's been discussed for decades, literally decades, but not a lot has happened on it. Whether law firms like it or not, this is going to force the issue now, the advent of AI here, because the technology is going to change the way we're putting products together. So we've been very aggressive about looking at how we price AI in addition to how we use it. So the obvious components of this, of course, the AI is going to generate work that will securely enable us to have a great work product in our system. We're accessing our own databases. We're not going out to the ether and pulling in everything in the universe. We have our own documents. I would encourage anyone to do that. You need to think about implementing a closed loop system to make sure your data, your client information is secure. But then in tandem with that, you have to look at pricing. And so we have multiple groups that are working together on this. And we do think flat rate pricing is where the future is. We've been speaking with a lot of GCs and in house lawyers as we've been developing our technology, asking what they want. And the general consensus is we like the idea of a flat rate, but frankly, firms have not been able to price it. They haven't been able to offer it. And we have to get our own people comfortable with it internally. So through conversation and by using the tools, we think there's an opportunity to give a better product at a better value at a flat rate. Second part of that is moving into how we access information. One of the parts I love about our Project Blue Wave AI is it plugs into our systems. And instead of having to go to a bunch of different applications on your desktop, you can get anything you want. So, as an example, if you want to find the firm's PTO policy, you can pull that up in a kind of a super search like function. If you want to generate the first draft of a motion to dismiss in Colorado that cites a new case, you type that in, it will generate that for you. If you'd like to look at the last 12 months of your working attorney collections, it'll go into our accounting system and pull that
Mhm.
information. So, what you're seeing is a reduction in no charge time in terms of how we access information, giving people the ability to find it in ways that they couldn't before, stopping a lot of the phone calls and emails. Where do I find this document? Now you know, but that's really the foundational level. The most exciting part is the generative component of these large language models and the product they're developing, which leads into the third part of how I think every firm needs to think about AI, which is how do you make your allied legal professionals super workers? And this is a term we like to use because it's going to make them more efficient at what they're doing. It'll make them better. And over time, if you don't have to hire as many folks, could also lead to reductions in overhead, which every business needs to think about responsibly as they look to the future. So, part of what comes along with AI is ensuring you're training your folks. They're becoming not just legal professionals, but prompt engineers. They have to understand how the technology works to get the most out of it. If you put all of those together, the delivery, the access, and the labor component, we think that's, at least for the immediate future, where AI is going.
How are you sort of handling maybe resistance by attorneys, which are, the typical attorney personality type isn't exactly known for embracing change. So how are you sort of helping attorneys to see becoming this like super worker as a real opportunity and not as a threat?
Yeah, you raise a really good point, Catherine. So across the industry, we know lawyers aren't usually known for embracing change and it takes time. So I think everything that we roll out in the firm has two components. There's the actual plan, what we put together with input from people to get buy-in, but then there's also the rollout. How do we get people comfortable with this? I think the single most important thing you can do always is to communicate. So we started communicating about AI years ago, before even the
Mm.
rise of the generative tools that you see today, like ChatGPT. We really started seeing changes emerging. There were a lot of legal tech companies that were using it. We partnered with some of those and used those internally. So it started with a discussion of what's possible. At every one of our monthly partner meetings, we also have meetings with our associates and of counsel. We come together to talk about what this future looks like. We get buy in on it. We bring in folks who can help us understand that future. One of the best we had recently was Richard Susskind, who's the author of Tomorrow's Lawyers. He's a prolific writer on AI. He knows probably more than anyone in the legal industry about it and opening people's eyes, engaging them in discussion. So when we got to the point of actually looking at products, people were ready to have a little bit more of an open mind. The next step was getting people actively involved in the process. At Fenimore, we have a group called Fenimore Labs that's charged with looking at these technologies, figuring out new ways to utilize them. And now, for over a year, they've looked at over 100 different AI based products. They've tried them out, they've used them. Some are good, some are bad, but it really got people involved and thinking about this. They then go out to their partners and other lawyers. They become evangelists for AI and what's possible. And we see people then opening their minds as well. So there's not an easy answer. There's no light switch here just to get everyone bought into the topic. But I think it's important to communicate the why, understanding where this is going, what the opportunities are, and frankly, what the world looks like if we don't do this. If our competitors continue to embrace this at the speed they are, we're left behind. Where does that leave our folks as well? What are our clients not getting from Fenimore that they can get elsewhere, or your law firm if you're listening to this? So I think it's just constantly keeping that going, painting the picture of the world, either direction you go, and then also for lawyers, they're appropriately focused on security. And I would say, just specific to this conversation, make sure you have a robust plan that addresses that, that you're looking at all of the relevant ethics rules. And I think that gets you a long way. And eventually, when you get it into folks' hands and they start seeing it firsthand, I think that's when they'll become believers.
Well, and so question for you that's sort of relevant to us because obviously, we work with a lot of law firms who are looking to hire. And just like marketing or accounting or anything else, hiring is its own skill, which sometimes for lawyers who don't have a lot of experience with that, there can be a ramp up period and they don't realize that that's kind of its own skill. But I would love to hear from your experience. What do you think are some of the biggest sort of hiring and management lessons that you've learned running the business side of a law firm over the past years?
Yeah, it's a really critical topic. Nothing's more important than the people you bring into your firm. These are the folks that are going to drive it forward. We're fundamentally a business that is about people. And if you look at law firms, the way they're structured, it's about relationships. It's still, despite the rise of AI, it's still a one on one business. So I think the first step is trying to find folks that share a similar vision for the future. And hopefully, you've identified what that is for your firm. You've gone through a process of looking inward, thinking about that, talking with one another. I would encourage everyone to create some sort of strategic plan. I think firms can get carried away with this and create documents that are really long that no one ever looks at, that will collect dust on a shelf. Don't do that. But think about what your core values are. So when you get into those conversations with attorneys you're considering hiring or allied legal professionals that you want to bring on board, you can ask them, do they share that? If you fundamentally have a vision for an innovative firm that's going to embrace AI technology and practice on flat rates, and someone comes in and says, that's not what I want. I like a traditional law firm. I want to work in the office every day. I love going to the library and holding the paper books. You may not be aligned in that vision. So I think you really need to tease out in your interviews, is that something um, that you share? And I think you need to ask the question, and you need to be forthright with the candidates too about where you see the organization going. I would also say that from my vantage point, everyone within the firm needs to be viewed as a leader. You may not be bringing on a COO, who would be an obvious example of that, but I would say every position that you have within the firm, and I'll use the example of a file clerk because I was a file clerk, is leading in some way, by example, in the way they communicate with others, in where they're working. And so I would really encourage your folks that are listening here to look for that leadership potential. Who are the people that will step up and don't want to be passive about their careers? And I think you're going to find two things. One, you're going to get a more engaged workforce, but two, you're going to find folks that actually may continue to move into new positions, find new skills, and eventually become those high level leaders as well. We have a lot of internal hiring that takes place at Fenimore all throughout the ranks, and we do that in formal ways with programs that get people into new positions. And we do that informally as well, as we let people explore their skill set. But if you find that leadership potential, and you have that alignment of vision, and you get people who are motivated about your firm, and hopefully you're delivering a product that motivates them, it's kind of a fundamental table stakes issue here. I think you're on the right road.
Is there anything in terms of the business of law that I didn't ask you about that you think is critical or we should talk about or that you wanted to mention today?
Well, the business of law is a huge topic, Catherine.
Yeah,
So
I
there's
know.
so much to cover. Gosh, I think we could probably talk for days about the topic. I would just say, as you migrate into leadership, at least from my perspective, you need to rely on people around you. Mentorship is going to be really important. So find those people you trust who have experience with it. That's been invaluable to me. I'd encourage people to formally train themselves. And that doesn't mean necessarily going and getting a degree, although I did do that eventually. I went back to business school and got a master's degree in entrepreneurship, which I found really helpful. I wrote my thesis on how to innovate in established businesses, because that fits with what we see in the legal world. But I would also say that could be something as informal as taking an online course, even YouTube videos. If you don't know the basics of accounting, better to get something to get started. I'd hope you're working with professionals on the outside or the inside, but there's no substitute for you understanding some of the basics yourself. So make sure you're really pushing yourself to always build in a percentage of your time dedicated to improving your leadership skills. There's this old, it now goes back many decades, but the Google principle of taking 20% of your time to focus on the future. I think that
Mm.
could really be important to leaders, taking 20% of their time to sharpen their skills, to get better at it. Of course, doing some of the work that's involved. But if you don't take the time, if you don't improve, you're going to be making mistakes. It's just a reality of the situation. So I'd say everyone take that 20%. It'll make you better.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate you being so generous with your time. I think this was incredibly valuable content and as it's great to talk to you. Hopefully we'll talk again before 6 years.
Sounds great. Appreciate it, Catherine.
All right. Thanks so much, James.